This is my new baby Budgie Picket. I just got him like 4 days ago, and now that he has settled into his environment, I'm going to show you guys how to tame a bird. He has never been tamed before. He is about 2 months old, and he hardly ever got handled when he was at the store I got him from. So I figured I'd take the opportunity to have a completely untamed bird and show you guys how I tame my birds. When you initially bring your bird home, you want to give it 4 days to a week to get used to its environment, figure out where its food and water dishes are, and figure out how to play with its new toys and maneuver around its cage. When it comes to cage sizes, you should probably watch some care videos, but I would never recommend keeping your bird permanently in a cage like this. I'm currently quarantining my bird away from my other pets, and I have a much larger cage for my bird once he's done in quarantine. I'm keeping my other Budgie, who is Tame, in my brother's bedroom while I keep my new bird in my bedroom so he's getting used to being around people. Most of the time when you get your bird from the pet store, its only interactions with people have been little kids tapping on the glass and saying, "Look at the birds, Mom." So you want to make sure that your bird is around other people so it's not getting stressed out by them. You also don't want dogs or cats in the same room as your bird. Never keep your bird by a window where it's going to have direct sunlight or drastic temperature changes, and you also want to keep your bird out of any kitchen, bathroom, or laundry room where there are going to be fumes that your bird could inhale and die from. I also recommend leaving your bird in a place where it's going to feel comfortable, which is most of the time a corner. If you don't have a corner to keep your bird in, you can put a blanket around the backside of its cage, so if it becomes overwhelmed, it can head to the back of its cage where its perches are and calm down and become more comfortable. Being around people is new for the bird, and it can be scary. Once you have left your bird alone and it has grown accustomed to its new environment, then you can move on to the taming process. If your bird is still scared of you, then one of the things you want to do is just place your hand on his cage and just talk to him. I've already done that step, and I was doing that yesterday, and since he's already pretty used to my hand being on his cage and me talking to him, I'm ready to move on to the next step. If your bird is still kind of skittish after a couple days of you just placing your hand on the cage and talking to your bird and not coming close to you at all, then you want to do that for a little longer. This can take anywhere from 1 day to a couple weeks. It literally just depends on the personality of the bird and how much interactions with people it's had. Try to ignore my bird trying to escape through the bars. He hears my bird in the other room and really wants to go see him. So once your bird is used to you talking, moving around him, replacing his food and water dishes, etc., and isn't scared of you placing your hand on their cage and talking to them anymore, you're ready to move on to the next step, which is putting your hand in their cage. One thing that's important to do is to find a treat that your bird really likes. You can try Nutriberries, millet, honey sticks, any kind of special treat that your bird doesn't get on a regular basis that you're going to use to hand feed your bird and get him used to your hand. The other thing to remember is that putting your hand into your bird's territory can be really stressful for him, which means that if your bird starts to fly into the walls of the cage, start to pant really heavily, or try and get away from your hand really quickly, you may want to remove your hand from the cage. You don't want to stress your bird out, and it's really important that you remember that the last thing you want is your bird to get hurt. And if your bird is doing something that could possibly get themselves hurt when your hand is in their cage, that means they're not ready for you to try and put your hand into their territory, and that means you're going to want to spend a little more time just putting your hand on their cage and talking to your bird. Okay, the best advice I can give you on taming your bird is take into consideration how your bird feels about you doing something with it. Your bird isn't going to want to spend time with you if you go into his cage and force him to interact with you every single day, and you don't take the process slow enough or correctly. Imagine how you would feel if someone came into your home, removed you, and took you away from all your friends and family, put you in a new environment, and then grabbed you and forced you to interact with them every single day. Your bird will not be happy, and neither will you. Your bird will not enjoy the time you spend with it, even if it eventually realizes that you're not going to be hurting it. Which means you have to take the process slow, and you have to do it correct. If you've seen one of those tutorials on YouTube on how to tame your bird in an hour, how to tame your bird in one single day, how to tame your bird in 10 minutes, I've seen videos like that and none of them are accurate. They show themselves grabbing and forcing the bird to stand on their finger, forcing them to eat from their hand, doing things that the bird doesn't want to do. And sure, the bird will eventually realize that they're not going to be hurting them, but they're not building a quality relationship with their animal, which is what the taming process is about. If you take into consideration how your bird feels and you take the process slow and do it correctly, you're going to have the best relationship you could possibly have with your bird. You just want to leave your hand in your bird's cage for a couple of days with some millet. Just do it for like 10 to 15 minute increments, at least 3 times a day for 2 to 3 days in a row, and you're going to be set, and that's when you'll be ready to move on to the next step. I still have about 1 day of doing this with my bird before I want to try and get him to stand on my hand. So I'll see you in a couple days. Once you're here and your bird is trusting and taking the food from you, you are able to move on to the next step of taming. Although it is best to make sure that your bird will take the food from you on multiple occasions before you move on to the part where you try and touch your bird. After hand feeding your bird his millet for a while, your bird shall eventually trust you enough to jump onto your hand to eat the millet. And as you can see, my bird does it just fine. And eventually, after he jumps on your hand several times, you'll be able to take him out of the cage. It's going to be the end of this portion of the video. I'm going to do this video in 2 parts. The first part, which you just finished watching, is the taming bit, and then the next part of the video, which will be a separate video, will be the bonding bit. I was originally going to do the entire video in one long video and not in 2 separate parts, but it got to be a little longer than I thought it would be just because I wanted to be really thorough on telling you how to tame your bird and bond with it. So stay tuned for the next video where I'll show you guys how to bond with your bird and how I do it with my birds. But for now, I'll see you all later. Goodbye.